Welcome back to my channel. It was 1985, a year that hovered between Cold War tension and American optimism. Ronald Reagan was president, the nation pulsed with economic revival, and personal computing was inching its way into homes. That same year, the U.S. Mint quietly struck hundreds of millions of quarters bearing the stoic profile of George Washington, unchanged in design, since John Flanagan portrait debuted in 1932. These coins were destined for routine, vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, each one a silver-hued disc to pass unnoticed through hands across the country. Yet, buried within this tide of uniformity, something unusual escaped into circulation. Philadelphia's Mint facility, typically the site of unremarkable production, was operating at full tilt to meet demand. Steel dies pounded blanks at furious speeds. The machinery was tested, calibrated, and constantly monitored. Or so it was believed. Somewhere during those mechanical rhythms, a minor deviation slipped by, unseen, undocumented, but not inconsequential. A collector, decades later, found the coin mixed with the mundane. It had been inherited in a jar of loose change passed down from a grandfather who'd never believed in banks. The jar had been rattling in a dusty attic for over 30 years before curiosity pried it open. The collector, quiet, methodical, someone who had studied numismatics not for profit but fascination, noticed something wrong before he could articulate it. The coin, duller than silver, bore the expected date, 1985. Its fields were aged and weathered, but that wasn't what held his gaze. It was the rim. Or rather, the absence of one. Upon closer inspection, the edge lacked the raised border that's supposed to frame every quarter. There were faint signs of doubling around the letters of United States of America, but it was the missing rim that triggered alarm bells. The coin had no mint mark either, identifying it as a Philadelphia issue, commonplace. And yet, it wasn't. He weighed it, normal. Measured it, standard diameter. Spun it, balanced. But something intangible pressed at his instincts. He took it to his local coin club that evening. The old-timers chuckled politely, until one man, silent and serious, asked to see it under his loupe. That man didn't laugh. He leaned in, frowned, flipped the coin, and narrowed his eyes. He set it down, tapped the table twice, and said, "You may have something very strange here." Research began immediately. What they discovered was peculiar. The coin had been struck on an improperly prepared planchet. Its metal surface, before even receiving the Washington design, had been subjected to a flawed annealing process. In essence, the coin's blank had not been heated and cooled evenly, resulting in microscopic inconsistencies in hardness. The consequence? During the striking, the design didn't fully flow into the rim areas. This explained the ghost-like border. Moreover, further microscopic study revealed weak hub doubling, not strong enough to be classified as a double die, but visible upon scrutiny. This wasn't the result of wear. This had been born with the coin. It was a misstep at the intersection of die creation and striking pressure. The layers of error, subtle rim fade, weak device doubling, and a misaligned die told a story not of a single oversight but a confluence of flaws that somehow survived inspection and entered circulation unnoticed. At first, the coin drew mild curiosity online. A few message board posts, some debate. Was it a real error, or just wear and tear playing tricks on the eyes? Then, an image of the coin was posted on a collector's forum specializing in die varieties. The reaction was swift and unusually intense. Private messages flowed in. One user, who had been tracking oddities from the 1980s Philadelphia runs, recognized the pattern. He had seen a similar specimen, only one, and it had been lost in a trade years ago. Another collector posted a side-by-side image of his own coin from 1985, nearly identical in anomaly. Then another. A small cluster of these flawed quarters began to emerge. They weren't identical, but they shared the same DNA. It was no longer a fluke. It was a recognized, albeit extremely limited, minting error. Still, value remained elusive. Error coins can skyrocket or stagnate based on how the market perceives their rarity and appeal. At first, offers trickled in $50, maybe $75. Modest, considering its origin. But one day, an auction listing quietly appeared. 1985 quarter, error coin, missing rim, weak doubling, Philadelphia Mint. Starting bid? $1. It closed at $132. Modest again. But then word spread further. Within a year, prices were climbing. The coin became a curiosity in coin shows. A small display at a Las Vegas expo drew a crowd when one collector revealed 3 specimens side by side. The question loomed, how many were out there? And more critically, how many remained hidden in plain sight? Anomalies in minting aren't always obvious. Some are so subtle they blend in with wear. But the 1985 error was different. It aged strangely. Over time, the lack of rim gave it an indistinct profile. In circulated condition, it appeared worn, abused. Only under a trained eye did the error scream its presence. A private collector from Oregon, known for specializing in modern coinage oddities, began a campaign. He offered $500 for any verified 1985 quarter bearing the defect. His offer drew attention. Coins started surfacing, not many, but enough to confirm the pattern. Each new piece came with a unique story, found in change at a gas station, discovered in an inherited piggy bank, or plucked from a toll booth drawer. Every story added mystique. Every coin, a whisper from a flawed production run no one had ever documented. The value began a quiet ascent, from hundreds to over 1,000. But then, unexpectedly, a twist emerged. A retired mint employee, long thought to be in poor health, gave an interview to a small-time numismatic blogger. During the 1980s, he recalled a specific incident. One of the die technicians had voiced concerns over irregular hubbing patterns, but was dismissed due to pressure to maintain output. This technician, it turned out, had filed an internal report, a report that never saw the light of day. The blog post included a grainy scan of that report, obtained through an anonymous source. In it, a memo described inconsistent die striking characteristics on a limited batch of quarter dies, particularly affecting rim formation and field depth. The date on the memo? February 1985. This revelation jolted the community. It wasn't merely an accident. It was a known issue that had been deliberately overlooked for efficiency. Suddenly, the 1985 error quarter wasn't just rare. It was part of a buried episode of mint history. As more collectors sought to verify and authenticate the coin, grading agencies were put on alert. PCGS and NGC both confirmed examples and began classifying them under a new sublabel, 1985 quarter, weak strike rim error. With official recognition, prices surged. One example, uncirculated and showing clear doubling in the motto, "In God We Trust," crossed the $2,000 mark in a private sale. But the most shocking moment came when a fourth known specimen appeared, not from circulation, but sealed within a mint-issued 1985 uncirculated set. The set had been purchased from a garage sale for $10. The error had sat unnoticed, gleaming among flawless coins, until a young collector noticed the missing rim and off-center strike on the quarter. When verified, this confirmed that at least some of these flawed coins had made it into government packaged sets thought to be pristine examples of mint craftsmanship. That sealed set, once confirmed, shattered expectations. It sold at auction for $6,700, with bidders locked in a fierce online war. The buyer? A museum curator building an exhibit on overlooked U.S. mint anomalies. The coin would now sit behind glass, its story etched into a display meant to celebrate imperfection. The original collector, who found the coin in a dusty jar, never imagined such ripples. He had declined to sell his piece, despite offers well into the thousands. For him, it remained a symbol of discovery, of paying attention when the world wasn't. More stories trickled in. A cashier in North Carolina found one in a bankroll and sold it for $800. A janitor in Montana kept his as a good luck charm after seeing its picture in a magazine. No more than a dozen examples had ever been confirmed, and each new one altered the landscape. Numismatists debated whether the value would plateau or rise further. Some said the market was saturated, that the mystery had peaked. But then a Canadian coin dealer claimed to have found a misstruck 1985 quarter with the same traits inside a roll of 1986 U.S. quarters. If true, it suggested that the defective dies may have remained in use longer than assumed. The U.S. Mint refused comment. Speculation reignited. Was there a second wave of errors? How many more remained buried in drawers, collections, or coin jars forgotten on shelves? Today, the 1985 quarter-error coin is more than a collector's item. It's a conversation starter, a case study, a modern legend. It reminds collectors that history doesn't always announce itself. It sometimes sneaks into our hands disguised as ordinary. And somewhere out there, another one waits to be found. In 1788, 13 stars adorn the national consciousness more than any minted metal. The fledgling United States was building its identity one state at a time, and amid the chaos of revolution's aftermath, the seeds of a national coinage system were only beginning to take root. The U.S. Mint itself wouldn't be established for another few years, and the country relied on foreign coinage to fill pockets and purses. So how, then, could a 1788 quarter possibly exist? That's what first puzzled the collector who found the coin, not in an antique chest or historical archive, but in a modern roll of quarters pulled from a regional bank in Delaware. The coin seemed familiar and yet utterly foreign. It had the standard quarter size and weight, with a clad surface that gleamed like any post-1999 quarter. But on its reverse, beneath the banner proclaiming, E pluribus unum, sat an unexpected inscription. 1788. Not as a commemorative note, but as a dominant date. The collector blinked, turned it over, and found the bust of George Washington staring back, modern, yet somehow mismatched with the date. His first thought was simple. It must be a gimmick, perhaps a state quarter. Delaware's statehood date was, after all, 1788. But something was off. The edge had no reading, the surface felt slightly off-textured, and the date on the obverse read, 1999. This was, unmistakably, a Delaware state quarter from the first year of the state quarters program. And yet it wasn't. The collector compared it to standard Delaware quarters in his album. Subtle anomalies emerged. The horse on the reverse, Caesar Rodney's steed, had slight doubling around the mane. The lines of the saddle were warped, and there was a faint die clash mark near the edge of the state's silhouette, an outline of Washington's profile visible from the opposite side, and the date, 1788, was recessed deeper than usual, as if overpunched or restamped. Even stranger, there was a faint ghost image of 1999 just beneath it, like a shadow trying to vanish. Word spread. A few experts weighed in. At first, the theory centered around a misaligned die, a simple enough mishap. But further analysis contradicted that. The coin had no post-mint damage. It wasn't altered. The metal was authentic. And when it was weighed on a high-precision scale, it came in 0.08 grams heavier than standard. The composition was tested. The coin had traces of silver, something not present in standard-clad quarters of the modern era. That discovery deepened the mystery. A modern coin bearing the 1999 design and date, with elements mimicking 1788, forged from an incorrect alloy. The most plausible theory was that a blank intended for a commemorative silver proof had been accidentally fed into a press running state quarters meant for circulation. But the added mystery of a faint double date and die clash suggested something more unusual. A search began. Was this coin unique? As collectors combed through their 1999 quarter rolls, a few more surfaced. Not many. Fewer than 10 were confirmed nationwide. Each bore similar traits: faint doubling on the reverse, die clash marks, and unusually deep 1788 inscriptions. Most, however, did not carry the silver traces. Only 2 others shared the slight alloy deviation. An experienced numismatist from New Hampshire made a stunning connection. He'd seen an experimental strike in the archives of a former mint employee's estate, a trial coin from the early days of the state quarters program when the mint was testing how different metals interacted with the new commemorative dies. Those trial pieces were never meant to leave the mint. If one somehow slipped into circulation, it would be not only rare, it would be virtually untraceable, undocumented, and unacknowledged by official channels. Collectors debated. Was it a test strike? A rogue planchet? Or was it something stranger? Perhaps an accidental hybrid between proof and circulation dies? The numismatic community split into factions. Some dismissed it as coincidence. Others smelled conspiracy. One bold theory emerged. A rogue mint worker, disillusioned with bureaucracy, had quietly struck a limited number of test pieces and released them into the wild. That story, as outlandish as it sounded, gained traction when a former mint inspector confessed, in a now-deleted interview, that during the late 1990s, internal oversight was stretched thin by the rapid demands of the state quarters program. Mistakes happened. Some were caught. Others were not. Demand surged. The first confirmed 1788 anomaly coin sold for $800 privately. Then a second appeared at auction, this one showing stronger doubling and confirmed silver traces. It fetched $100. A third, discovered in Pennsylvania, had nearly perfect strike quality and was encapsulated by PCGS with the note, "Specimen strike, unconfirmed origin." That one went for $800. A twist came when a fourth coin appeared, not in a roll, but in a seal-proof set. It had been gifted as part of a commemorative set in 1999, but never opened. The owner, unaware of its significance, had placed it in a drawer for 25 years. When it was finally appraised, the coin was authenticated as containing 90% silver, a proof finish, and bearing both visible shadow dates beneath the statehood date. It shattered expectations. That single coin sold for $21 per hundred at auction. And then, silence. No further examples have emerged since. To this day, the 1788 error quarter remains among the rarest modern coin mysteries in U.S. history. Official mint records list no such planchets struck for Delaware quarters in 90% silver. No documentation exists of double-dated dies, and no acknowledgement has ever been made publicly regarding their existence. Collectors speculate that perhaps 10 to 12 were ever produced. Of those, fewer than 6 are known. Each carries slight variations, like fingerprints left behind in the chaos of a high-speed minting operation that lost control, if only briefly. The original collector still holds his coin. He's declined every offer, some reaching above $10,000. For him, it's not about the money. It's about the unexplainable convergence of history, metallurgy, and minting error. About how a statehood year, 1788, could imprint itself so powerfully on a coin born 2 centuries later. It's about how silence from the mint only intensifies the value of the unknown, but for one fortunate owner, whose Delaware quarter bore every known marker, deep 1788 date, faint 1999 ghost, die clash, and silver alloy, it meant much more. That single coin, sold quietly in a private sale last year, with full documentation and authentication, changed hands for a staggering $93,000. A coin born from error, wrapped in mystery, and made immortal by its refusal to be explained. In the wide arc of American numismatics, some coins speak with thunder, bold minting errors, historical overstrikes, or misprinted legends that scream for attention. But every so often, a coin whispers. It doesn't shout from the cases of famous collectors or scream from auction houses. Instead, it waits, tucked quietly in change drawers, toll booth trays, or loose piles of pocket silver. That's where the 2004 US quarter made its first silent appearance. At first glance, it looked just like any other from the state quarters program. A tribute to Michigan, its reverse bore the Great Lakes surrounding the state's outline, rendered in crisp relief. The inscription was clear. The date, 2004, unassuming. The obverse still carried the familiar profile of Washington, stern and steady. There was no reason to suspect anything different, until a coin roll hunter in Ohio, shifting through a fresh box from his local bank, felt it. He didn't see the anomaly at first. What caught his attention was something tactile. A slight drag on the thumb. The edge felt wrong, less defined, not as smooth. Curious, he pulled it under a magnifier. The ridges along the rim were partially missing, fading into a near-smooth transition. An off-center strike? Perhaps. But what unfolded under further scrutiny was far more complex. Looking closer at the reverse, he noticed that Lake Huron had doubled. A faint but visible doubling of the waterline, almost like a shadow echoing itself. The text along the top, Michigan 1837, also showed signs of splitting, a clear indication of a double die. But what froze the collector mid-examination was something more unusual. Beneath the state's outline, a shallow arc, like a ghostly partial design, emerged when light struck the surface just right. It wasn't part of Michigan's geography. It wasn't part of the regular die pattern. This wasn't just a double die. It appeared to be a reverse overstrike, another quarter design faintly imprinted beneath the Michigan one. The contours suggested part of the Florida quarter, which also debuted in 2004. It was as though, somehow, two state designs had collided. The numismatic community stirred. Photos circulated online, though skeptics were quick to label it machine doubling or postmint damage. But further investigation proved otherwise. The doubling was consistent with a hubbing error, where the die itself had retained remnants of another state's design during the pressing process. This wasn't a common occurrence. In fact, it shouldn't have been possible. Experts theorized that during the chaotic early months of 2004, when multiple state dies were being rapidly prepared and swapped out, an unfinished die from the Florida quarter was mistakenly used to prepare a new reverse die for Michigan. The resulting tool carried microscopic remnants of the previous design. These remnants, pressed into the coin, created a partial, barely there Florida overlay on the Michigan quarter. The coin's other anomaly, the weak edge reading, suggested it had been struck with incorrect collar pressure, further supporting the theory that this was a production stage error, not postmint alteration. Word spread fast. Collectors scoured their rolls. A few more examples emerged, each displaying varying degrees of doubling and ghost design bleed-throughs. One showed what appeared to be a faint mast, likely from the Florida quarter's depiction of the 16th century Spanish galleon. Another showed a partial line resembling the edge of Florida's coastline, faint but unmistakable. But none were as sharp or as clear as the Ohio coin. That original piece became the benchmark, the measuring stick for all others. It was submitted to PCGS, where it was examined by multiple graders. They confirmed the double die and partial overstrike, calling it one of the most unusual hybrid errors of the state quarters era. It was slabbed with the notation, 2004 D Michigan quarter, double die reverse with partial design overlay. Collectors debated the rarity. While double dies were not uncommon during the rush of state quarter production, overstruck state designs were unheard of. In a program that ran for over a decade and produced billions of coins, this was a needle in a haystack, an unintentional fusion of two states, frozen in metal. The market responded with a mixture of caution and excitement. The first sale came modestly, just over $400 at a small estate auction. Then, as more attention came, the Ohio coin re-entered the market and quickly surpassed expectations. A New York collector placed a bid of $3,200. Days later, another collector, eager to secure what he believed was a minting first, outbid him at $5,100. Prices varied. Lesser examples with fainter overlays sold between $300 and $800, depending on condition. But the finest example, the Ohio coin, reached legendary status. An unexpected twist emerged when a former U.S. Mint technician anonymously contacted a numismatic journal. According to their account, the die preparation facilities at the Denver Mint had indeed faced issues in late 2003 and early 2004 with cross-contamination between design hubs. Several die blanks were improperly stored and then reused. While they never admitted any escaped into circulation, the timing matched the known anomalies perfectly. Suddenly, the theory wasn't just speculation. It was grounded in insider knowledge. The Ohio collector was approached once more, this time by a museum curator specializing in modern minting history. They wanted to display the coin not just as a rare quarter, but as a symbol of how industrial processes, even in highly controlled environments, can produce unexpected results. He declined. The coin remained in private hands, quietly appreciating the stuff of whispered lore among modern collectors. Fewer than 5 strong examples have surfaced since. All carry Denver Mint marks. All show some level of overlay or doubling. But none match the precision or clarity of the first, and as demand continued to grow, fueled by articles, collector forums, and auction chatter, so too did the price. Last year, during a discreet transaction brokered by a major numismatic dealer, the Ohio coin changed hands again. Authenticated, encapsulated, and paired with original discovery documentation, the coin sold for $84,000. An error born not from damage, but from a rare collision of designs, timing, and imperfect human process. A coin that quietly bridged 2 states in one metallic whisper, and turned a small detail into a 6-figure treasure.